came across the Seiko SUR557, I thought to myself, how could I have missed this? But more importantly, how could the watch community have missed this one? The Tissot PRX was such a huge hit and success, I always thought it was crazy that Seiko didn't bring a competitor to the market ASAP. But apparently they did, but it went vastly under the radar for most of the watch community. So today I'm really excited to bring you Seiko's version of the PRX, the SUR557, or what I'm going to call the Seiko PRX. So first things first, this is a quartz Seiko. And obviously, you're looking at the dial and noticing how the second hand doesn't hit most of the markers. So, safe to say, it's not a grand Seiko by any stretch of the means. Matter of fact, on Joma Shop, you can get this watch for about $180 at the end of 2023. That's less than half the price for the Tissot PRX quartz version, which comes in at just under $400 on the Tissot website. I should also mention there are a few variations of this watch. These are from the Seiko Essentials collection. You have the SUR553, which has a white dial, the SUR555, which is the blue dial, the SUR558, which is the two-tone version, and then the 557, which is the one in my hand. On the Seiko site, they retail from $315 to $350. So as we go through this review, I want you to keep in mind that this Seiko is less than 50% of the price of the Tissot PRX on some gray market sites. Is this watch perfect? Absolutely not. I know I've already pointed out the secondhand issue, but there are other things that I'll be pointing out as well that I don't really prefer over the PRX. There are a few things that this watch does better than the Tissot in my opinion, so stick around. I'm going to give you the pros and the cons and what it's like to own the SUR557, also known as the Seiko PRX. So let's start with the dimensions of the watch. The Seiko's diameter is about 39 millimeters. The lug to lug is 44 millimeters. Very similar dimensions to the Tissot PRX, but the Seiko is just over 1 millimeter smaller in its dimension. But here's where the Seiko really shines. There are 20 millimeter lugs. Even though this watch looks like an integrated bracelet watch, it's more of a hooded lug case, and you can actually remove the bracelet and install other 20 millimeter straps. Make sure you stick around because I'm going to show you what that looks like on different straps and even on a bracelet. Another characteristic that outshines the Tissot PRX is the thinness of the Seiko. The quartz version of the Tissot is over 10 millimeters thick, but the Seiko is 8.5 millimeters thin. That's almost 2 millimeters thinner than the Tissot PRX, which makes for an even more amazing wearing experience. If you're like me and really enjoyed the way the Tissot PRX wore on the wrist, Seiko's version is even better in my opinion. Well, except for the bracelet, but I'm going to get to that. Also, I wanted to mention here that the Seiko PRX sized to my 7¼ inch wrist comes in at 121 grams. The weight of the watch also adds to the wearability of this piece. Like I said earlier, I want you to keep in mind the price point of this watch, especially when you take a look at the beautiful chamfering around the case. It's very well done for the price, and the bezel has this polishing around the sides and the base of the bezel, but the top of it is brushed, giving it that sports watch feel. Less dressy, a little more sporty. The crown, of course, it's not signed, but it's a Seiko. I mean, what did you expect? Just so you know, I've spent a lot of time with the Tissot Powermatic 80, which I owned for a couple of months. I didn't do a full review video of the Tissot PRX since there were so many review videos before I even got mine. But I did do a comparison video between straps and the Zenith Defy Classic Automatic where I did a side-by-side kind of apples to oranges comparison. I'll put a link to that video here so you can see it. The reason why I don't own the Tissot any longer, it's because I traded it for this beautiful Dietrich Skin Diver 2. I wanted it in blue instead of my old black version. And also, I own a Maurice Lacroix Icon, which is an amazing integrated bracelet and far more superior to the PRX. Anyway, the reason why I'm saying this is because I do have a lot of experience with the Tissot PRX as a base comparison. Anyway, let's get back to the Seiko PRX. Going back to the bracelet, what you're going to notice with the Seiko bracelet is it's not quite the same as the Tissot. There's some polishing located on each individual link, making it not quite an H link, but maybe a, U link. But also notice that each link has what seems to be a method of removing each individual link with what seems to be disguised as a pin, but I don't think you can remove each link. There are only a few of them which suggest that you can push out the pin since they have the arrows underneath. Speaking of which, this is a new system for Seiko, and they've even included a link removal tool and instructions on how to remove these links. From my experience of wearing the Seiko PRX bracelet, it doesn't pull out any hairs of my abnormally hairy forearms. The first question I got from one of my watch enthusiast buddies was, "Hey, is the bracelet Seiko jangly?" And my answer to this is not really. A little. It's not as refined as the Tissot PRX in my opinion, but look at the clasp. It's a pressed clasp in very unexciting Seiko flair. But the flip side is there is a micro adjust, which is nice because the Tissot PRX just has the butterfly clasp with no micro adjust, and if my memory serves me correctly, no half links either. So theoretically, it's going to be easier to find a better fit with the Seiko. Staying on the bracelet, one of the downsides that I have found with the bracelet is there is no taper. One of the beautiful aspects of the Tissot PRX is that the bracelet tapers nicely to the butterfly clasp. Here with the Seiko PRX, there is no taper. It is 20 millimeters at the clasp, which is a bit of a disappointment if you ask me. Let's move along to the dial of the Seiko. There's a very popular YouTuber that did a video on this watch, and he is such a more skilled person at taking pictures and video than I am. And he made a point in describing that the Seiko PRX really brings in some grand Seiko DNA, which he is right. And at this price point, it's really nice to see. Also, the Seiko has a sapphire crystal, which is amazing at this price point. If you look at the dial markers closely, you can definitely see that grand Seiko DNA. Also, there's some lume plots on the outside of the dial markers. The Alpha handset also have some lume, but I would have to say that this is the most disappointing Seiko lume I've seen in quite some time. Then again, if I recall the Tissot PRX lume, it was disappointing too. The dial itself has a stripe pattern, which is nice, although I would have preferred like a matte black or non-textured dial personally, but I understand that's a personal preference. The one thing I wish Seiko did differently was give the date wheel some color to match the dial. The white date at the 3 o'clock on this black dial is more of an eyesore. But at least there's a polished frame around the date. Also, the Seiko logo, which is applied and beautifully set on the dial. This little touch that Seiko does gives this particular watch a very premium feel in my opinion. Now let's look at the case back. It's pretty plain. But I've seen videos on the quartz Tissot PRX and it's pretty plain as well. Remember, I had the Powermatic 80 so I could see the movement. Anyway, this screw down case back is nice. The Tissot PRX has a pressed on case back. The screw down case back with the push pull crown gives the Seiko 100 meters of water resistance, which does make it a go anywhere, do anything type of sports watch. And being quartz, it's a nice daily grab and go watch as well. Let's talk about how this watch wears on the wrist. The fact that this watch has such a thin profile, it's less than 39 millimeters in diameter and only 121 grams, makes this a very easy to wear grab and go watch. It slips nicely under any cuff. It can be dressed down with jeans and a t-shirt or dressed up under a suit. One of the biggest benefits of this watch over the Tissot is that you can remove the bracelet. But, here's the but. Swapping out 20mm straps is a different story. As you can see underneath the case, there is very little clearance for leather or rubber straps to fit. I have dozens of leather straps, and the only ones I could fit underneath these lugs was this fair strap. It looks pretty good. It does change up the look quite a bit. But take a look at this mesh strap. Doesn't it look like a Skagen watch? You know those old Danish design watches that were really popular in the 1990s? Anyway, I'm assuming if you have a collection of straps, you might be able to find one or two that'll fit underneath these hooded lugs. So all in all, I think this is a really nice watch. And it's a really nice under the radar offering from Seiko. I'm still puzzled how this was released and didn't get much attention at all. For less than $200, you have a PRX alternative. And if you're a Seiko fanboy like me, it's a wonderful option to have. Is this watch as nice as a Tissot PRX? No, not in my opinion. It is not. But for less than half the price, this is a great option for a go anywhere, do anything, grab and go watch. And it has an integrated bracelet. For me, it's a watch that's going to make its way into my permanent collection. So if you've had any experiences with the Seiko PRX SUR557 or any of its variants, what are your thoughts? Make sure you let us know in the comments below. And I also have to ask, would you choose this Seiko over the Tissot PRX, especially how the Tissot has become such a mid-tier icon watch the last couple of years? And if you made it this far, let me introduce myself. My name is Blake, and as you can't tell, or as you probably can tell, excuse me, I'm a bit of a watchaholic. And if you've made it this far, I'm assuming you're a watchaholic too. Thanks for tuning in today. I'll see you guys and gals in the next video.